After an accident, minutes matter. Your words and actions matter even more. You need help, and you need it now. This is David versus Goliath, brought to you by Dolman Law Group Accident Injury Lawyers, a boutique firm with a reputation for going head-to-head with the insurance company giants and putting people over profits.
Welcome to another episode of the David and Goliath podcast. I'm Matt Dolman from the Dolman Law Group with my partner in crime, business partner Stan Gipe, and our esteemed guest today is Daniel Herrera. Daniel, introduce the company you work for. Tell us a little about Evolv.
Yeah, so Daniel Herrera, CEO of Evolv I.T. So we're a managed IT and cybersecurity company, primarily work in the professional service industry. So we work with law firms, healthcare, insurance agencies. So really, those are in the professional services industry.
Understood. So we're going to jump right into it. Let's talk about, this is like the subject of numerous days of news coverage, CrowdStrike. This affected so many different verticals, but everyone obviously is aware of how it affected the airlines and grounded many airlines, including Delta, for days, caused over 14,000 flight delays and cancellations. What caused this? Like, what is the background and the precipice to causing CrowdStrike?
But before we get to that, I want to step into, I'm kind of a nerd, right? And I followed this. So when we heard we were doing this podcast in Avignon, I got kind of excited about this because, before we knew that this was a CrowdStrike issue, right? Everyone's like, is this a cyber attack? Is this the big one? What's going on? So there was a lot of drama associated with this issue on the front end. You follow it really closely, and then, pardon the French, once you realize, the story, you're like, holy shit, one little person can screw all this up? Like the whole world falls apart when one person misses a key? So break it down for us and kind of in an everyman sort of format of so everyone can understand. But I find this particularly a fascinating incident.
Yeah, it was the largest IT outage in the U.S. history. Or in the global history so far. Now, crazy, it affected 8.5 million devices that are known. There might be more than that. But that's actually only 1% or less than 1% of the Microsoft devices out there. So if you just kind of think about how catastrophic this is and the amount of money this cost, for it to only affect 1%. And as you said, the airlines were hit, really, really hard. Delta's now claiming they lost over $500 million just from this incident alone. But really, way this started is from, like you said, an update. So CrowdStrike is, a cyber agent that gets put on machines. They're constantly watching, trying to help prevent the bad stuff going out there. Now, Microsoft has partnered with a lot of these companies to allow them to act at the kernel level, which means they've got really high privilege. They're able to kind of see and do everything going on in Windows and on the operating system side. And this was all from one update that went out and was only out there for 1 hour. So it wasn't even something that was, pushed out for days or weeks. They caught it within 1 hour, reverted it, but that much damage was caused in 1 hour of time.
So let me ask you, and I thought about this the first time, I'm like, in 1 hour, these people are on the ball, but then I read a little deeper and saw why it was the airlines and a lot of these bigger companies, because these updates are kind of automatic. They get pushed out, your system automatically does it. So if you're someone like an airline who's running 24 hours a day, the system's always up. As soon as the update's out, it comes to you. So it seemed like the bigger, more sophisticated companies ate the poison pill first, right? They were the first person in the buffet line and they ate it and go, oh my gosh, the food's rotten. Everyone stop, the food's horrible. Is that kind of what happened?
It is. So these updates are going out multiple times throughout the day. This isn't a once a time. It's literally, as soon as they're finding some type of issue or some type of problem in the world or a better way to identify something, these updates are going out. So it may happen once a day. It may happen 10 times a day. It's sensors, and they're getting basically signature updates. And so this update was really supposed to kind of increase the efficiency of the way the sensor could actually listen to the Microsoft's back-end communication going on. But of course, instead of enhancing that and being more efficient, it caused this major blue screen of death issue. And there's still companies that are down. They're estimating it could be another 2, 3, 4 months before some of these companies are fully back online.
Explain that. So how does that knock a company offline? How do you get off the grid because of an update?
Yeah, so the update basically, caused a blue screen of death. So because this application is such high privilege and it's running at the kernel level of Microsoft, it was able to cause a fault in the operating system, so cause a blue screen of death and basically put your machines in a loop. So it'd boot up to Windows, it'd go into a blue screen, reboot, boot up into Windows, just in that vicious cycle. So for a lot of these companies that are actually running security the way you're supposed to, they've got their machines encrypted. So now to go resolve the issue, they're having to physically touch every single device. If they're encrypted, they're having to actually type in this really long encryption key just to even get the machine to boot again, and then try to repair the issue. Sometimes they're having to reinstall Windows. Sometimes they can apply a patch. So it's a manual boots on the ground for a lot of these companies. I'm in a part of a lot of different security groups and IT groups, and I'm seeing where people are asking for help for anyone in these areas, saying, "Hey, do you have boots on the ground we can hire just to deploy your people to our clients or to our other locations, just to get back online?"
So, and I think we kind of got ahead of ourselves at the very, very beginning here. Maybe because some people may not be familiar with what happened with CrowdStrike. We just kind of jumped into. Daniel, can you break it down in like maybe 2 minutes just to explain what we're talking about here?
Yeah, so if you don't know who CrowdStrike is, it's one of the top cybersecurity software companies, in the world. And so they work with either enterprise level clients or they work with managed service providers like ourselves, to be able to provide that agent and that extra level security on machines that's really kind of going above and beyond traditional antivirus. So it's looking for next day stuff. It's actually watching what different types of applications are doing, how they're interacting. Are they encrypting files? Are they moving files? So it's kind of to the next level. And so, with that, their engineering team is consistently looking at different threats out there, different types of issues, different types of problems. And this was just one of their developers released the update on one of their standard signatures. And that's what, crippled and brought everything to its knees.
So it was this update got released, and then like Airlines, everyone they just went down, right? They went down for quite a while. So
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about here. If you're listening to it and wondering why it was such a big deal, because some people may not have remembered the initial thing that happened. It was that huge update basically took Airlines everything off, and you said Delta alone, you heard lost 500 million.
Yeah, 500 million. So it's estimated so far from insurers that it's over $5.4 billion that they're
And
aware
growing
of.
and growing.
And
Delta
growing.
still grows every day.
Yeah.
They're still having issues they're still catching up on.
Yeah. And CrowdStrike is, of course, yeah, I would say, of course, massive lawsuits are now starting to flow into CrowdStrike. You've got, Delta CEO saying that he's potentially going to get away from using Microsoft now. Even though this truly wasn't a Microsoft issue, they're being blamed for some of this. And so you've got businesses now starting to rethink and reevaluate how they do business, just from a single software issue.
So is Windows-based applications more vulnerable? Talk about vulnerability. Like, how do you stop something like this from happening? Or is there certain devices that are almost immunized from this kind of problem?
Yeah, so nothing is immunized from this. It doesn't matter if you're running Mac, if you're running Linux, if you're running Windows. They all have their different types of threats. They all have their issues. You hear a lot more from Microsoft because it's the global of business. It's what everyone runs. So Mac is growing in popularity. It has its own set of issues, but majority of businesses are still running Microsoft. And so, most of your hackers, they're still attacking Microsoft primarily. They're still putting the ransomware, all the different, malware, everything out there. Microsoft is the forefront. But again, if you're trying to go after the most money, you want to go who has the most money.
But is that not true though? Is Mac-based products safer? I've always heard they're less vulnerable to viruses.
They are less vulnerable. They've got a whole different set and a different way of how they handle software, the way it runs. Especially when you get into like the phone side, Android first iPhone. iPhone is a lot more secure in that front because the way they handle their security and the way they isolate. But you also have more limitations with that. So, Windows and Linux, for instance, they like to allow you to customize, allow you to do more stuff to the system. For those of us that run Apple, sometimes they put you in a box and you have to fit in their box. That does allow them to have better security, allow them to have better control. But again, you're put into a box with that as well.
Understood.
So, I want to ask you, how big is CrowdStrike as a company? Because my first thought, like, I'm an attorney, I sue people for damages, right? It's what I do for a living. My first thought was, that the world is offline. This has to be costing them like $10 million a minute for, as long as this thing is going on. And is CrowdStrike a big company? I mean, can they pay billions of dollars in damages?
Yeah, they're a large company. They're publicly traded, and so their stock has, of course, plummeted. I believe it's a little over 11% so far. I assume it's going to continue taking hits as more lawsuits come in, and the amount of money lost continues to grow. I don't know their full financial background or the strength. I imagine their insurance company is freaking out right now and trying to figure out how to handle this. But they are a large company. Whether they survive this or not, I guess we'll see.
Yeah, because that's one of the things I thought. It just kind of crossed my mind. Literally, companies could be, almost too big to succeed, right? Because no one's perfect, and as soon as if you're that ingrained, right? And this got taken off. Had this been up for 4 hours, think of how much more damage would have been done, right? This is 1 hour it was up.
Yeah. Well, and now the worst side is you've got all these cyber, hacker groups out there, and these bad groups. They're taking advantage of this. So now they're starting to reach out to people, pretend to be from CrowdStrike. They're offering patches, and they'll email you the patch or give you a link to download the patch, and that's infecting your system. There's phishing campaigns going on. So now there's all kinds of announcements and publications going out there that are warning, hey, we're past this, at least initial issue. But now you've got a whole other set of issue and all the malware and everything trying to take advantage of it.
So are you able to give me any insight on this? Because I think it was around December of last year. It's Southwest Airlines, basically, if you remember, crapped the bed because of their antiquated software. Right, and they just couldn't, they went offline, couldn't get everything related. Then CrowdStrike comes, and because of their antiquated systems, they're the only ones that weren't affected. What is that? What is it about their systems that sort of made them the outlier?
Yeah, so it really depends on how they're set up on the back end of their infrastructure. I don't know the full details around that, but if you're running more antiquated systems, you generally got those more locked down. So whereas here, some people are pulling these updates live, they're directly communicating to the internet. When you've got more antiquated systems, you do generally, from a security standpoint, you want to isolate those. You want to limit their exposure to the internet, limit they being able to talk directly to the internet. So in that case, it won't be able to pull these updates as live or as frequently as their systems that are actively able to communicate. And so therefore you would have a delay in them being able to receive, whether it's Windows updates, security updates, any type of information, there is a delay in those receiving that.
So what do we learn from this? What do Fortune 1000 companies do to prevent this kind of issue going forward?
I think the biggest thing is I don't think you fully can prevent this. Security's always going to be increasing, always in changing. I mean, that's how these cyber criminal groups make their money. And so they're always going to be looking at ways to get around these types of systems, especially with AI increasing. They're using AI to defend. Now they're using AI on the offensive side. And so I don't think there's a way to fully prevent this. I think the bigger side is going to look at now, they're going to pay more attention to their business continuity and things that they need to do in the middle of a disaster. How can we fail over faster? But again, I don't think this stuff is a once and done. I think we're going to see more of these things. It's just the nature of what's going on with security.
So let me, when you do this, you deal, and I'm going to guess because you're in IT and IT security, with hacker attacks, right? Is that something you ever have to deal with in your, so something like this, if it's a hacker attack, this is typically like more directed, right? We got one person on one. They're making an attack on an individual system, right?
Yep.
Are there in that scenario? I'm guessing there are things you do, right? You go out, you make you can usually figure out how this hacker got in, what they did, and you can beef up security, right? You can make some, hey, look, remind people phishing, don't respond to these emails. Whatever the hole was, you can do something. That and Matt hit on it. Like literally, what is it you do at an enterprise level to prevent, like to even begin to protect yourself from this again?
Yeah, it's a catch-22 on that, because if you limit, how often you're doing these updates, you now increase your risk of an actual true attack or, a cyber instance happening. So you want to have these coming in as quick as possible to add signature updates to catch things, but at the same time, you've got this risk as well. It's kind of like that with the Microsoft Windows updates, for instance. A lot of companies started getting where they delayed those for 30, 60, 90 days. Well, now you've got things that, sometimes are coming out weekly or more often than that. And so you've got to kind of try to play a happy medium of, how much risk can we accept versus, how fast do we want to be able to patch and stay secure on things. I'm sure after this, there's going to be a lot more, discussion, more things are going to come out on ways to prevent this. But again, you're having to allow these systems kernel level access in order for them to stop this bad stuff happening. And all it takes is, a human error on the other side. No matter how much testing you do, there's so many different variables of all the different systems, all the different software, all the different setups. So even if you've got Microsoft doing their updates and they release something bad, there's only so much testing that they can do and try to catch until it goes in the wild. And then you just have to, unfortunately, see what happens.
Understood. So, to geek out for a second, if you're watching over a company, right, and you're seeing a denial of service attack on a server, what do you do at that moment? Is there a specific method of, like, you see the attack happening in real time? What does a company do, or what do you do as an IT specialist? How do you stop the attack while it's going on?
Yeah, so first is kind of identifying, where's it coming from? What is it hitting? What's it attacking? A lot of times you see it coming from other countries. And so one of the common things is have your geo filtering or geo blocking on. So you want to filter out any traffic that's from countries you don't do business with. Now, as cloud applications are growing, that's becoming more and more difficult to do because people are starting to have data centers in different parts of the world. And so you're now having to kind of lift some of your blocks in that. But one of the first things we do on that side is we can see where the traffic generating, try to cut that traffic. The other side is, depending on your carrier, if you've got multiple ISPs or multiple internet providers, we can flip your traffic over. So generally what they'll do is they'll have a particular IP address that's coming in on that, on that one side. So we can cut you to a different carrier, which will, drop that traffic, temporarily mitigate the issue. The other side we see is you've got something allowed, such as we see like Citrix, for instance. That's a product that people have open. They allow the VDI, remote access. So sometimes you have to temporarily, literally shut that down while you can put in some other mitigating controls or determine why you're being attacked on that side.
Because Citrix, it gives you like a backdoor to your server?
It does. So you see a lot of like healthcare run it. A lot of larger companies run that. They do VDI, which is called virtual desktops, and so they allow for the remote employees very quick, easy access into the systems. It is fairly secure when set up, but again, anytime you've got anything that's penetrating a hole in through your network or through your security, if that gets detected or you get something, leaks a credential, and that gets sold on the dark web, you've opened yourself up for liability of being attacked there.
Sure. That's where we see the biggest data breaches. What do they, is there like law enforcement that looks at this though?
There is. It's constantly being watched, but I mean, the amount of data that gets out there, the amount of compromises that happen, there's companies that get compromised data leaked and they just keep their mouth shut, don't tell anybody. We watch for a lot of our clients. We try to watch the dark web, but it's so much out there now. If you just kind of go do a scan and look at your own information, it's crazy what you can find that's for sale. Just on your own stuff. Like I've looked at my own and I found my usernames, passwords. Even here local in Birmingham, there's a for like parking. There's a mobile app you use to do your parking. Well, they leaked. So my username's out there, my password's out there, my tag is out there, my address, all my information is leaked just through that one piece of software.
Well, now that you mentioned this, I've always wondered, okay, I hear the dark web, right? You hear it, it's this somehow part of the internet that must be inaccessible to idiots like me who are not tech savvy, but somehow this group of people who know what they're doing connects. What the hell is it?
So it's different ways to access it. Unfortunately, you can go on YouTube and you can actually find out or learn exactly where to get in, how to get stuff. It's really is just a part of the internet that if you know how to access, you can buy anything you want on there. If you want drugs, you want guns, you want, any other type of illegal products, it's there. If I want to buy credit card numbers, I can buy credit card numbers, Social Security. Basically anything you think of that is criminal, it's there. It's
When you say it's serious, like if you go on there, is there like an Amazon or something where you kind of just like put in what you're looking for and you've got here's, like how does that work?
Yeah, basically think of Craigslist. If you've ever used that, it's very similar. And very similar to an eBay type. So it really depends on the different platform and the way you go in. But you go in there, it's almost like a store or classifieds. You can buy the information, you can put requests in for what you want. So if there are different things that you would like to obtain, different content you would obtain, you can go in and put a request, people will answer to that. They sometimes will do checks to try to verify that you're not law enforcement. So some of these different areas, you have to know somebody who's already in there and they have to, vouch for you. Others.
This was like Silk Road, right? Remember, it was a Silk Road, or I'm trying to remember the name of the biggest hacker collective. I remember seeing an episode about it. This is American Greed. So bear with me on my ignorance. It was, is it Silk? Something Silk, right?
I'm not sure on that.
Silk Road I can tell you exactly what it is. It was this one dude had set, because I like this stuff, set up, it was almost like an eBay for drugs on the dark web. It was exactly what you're talking about, but it became sort of like the biggest marketplace on the dark web for selling all these drugs. They caught the kid, or the guy who was doing it. It was really funny because I can't remember his name or many of the facts, but you remember it was almost like, some guy living in an apartment next to his parents' house, and this website here, had done like $6 billion worth of, illegal heroin sales in the last year. And you're like, where's it? It's almost like he's doing it for fun and not even making any money.
He was. Yeah, he admitted it. He did it for kicks. I mean, he's looking to make some money, but yeah, he was enjoying what he was doing.
Now, you've given me a rabbit hole to crawl down because now I want to go on the dark web and see what exactly is for sale about me.
Boy. Yeah, it's interesting, especially when you run it across the company. There was a financial company we went in to meet with. And before we, went in and met with everybody, we actually pulled a scan of everything on the dark web. And we happened to sit down with the CEO and we're like, hey, does such and such ring a bell with you? And he looked at us and he's like, where did you get that? And we're like, well, we found it on the dark web. It cost us like 79 cents to buy it. And he goes, that's my password to everything in my life. And we're like, yeah, it was leaked about a year ago. It's all over the place. And so immediately had to go change his information, password, we gave him the details and he was freaking out. He's like, that really that's to my bank account. That's to my company. That's to everything I do in my life. And so it is really scary of what's out there and how easy it is to obtain information.
So then the question then is, what does Daniel Herrera do about how do you protect your own personal stuff? Is there a service? Is there a company that you recommend besides obviously Evolv? Is there some way to do this on your personal accounts? Is there some type of insurance? What do you do?
Yeah, it's really tough, just because it's constantly changing. Things get out there and companies don't know about it. As soon as you'll hear the FBI will go close down certain areas, shut servers down, and you got 5 more popping up. So the biggest thing is stay vigilant, make sure you're watching your credit. If you need some kind of credit monitoring, I would definitely put that in place. I have it for me.
Who do you use?
So I use LifeLock.
Okay.
It's one of the most common, through Norton. Works pretty good. They alert you if anything's happening, if you've got, any negative stuff, any type, like I recently just had somebody trying to open a credit card in my name. They alerted me immediately and I'm able to go deal with that. But you just got to be proactive as much as you can. Like I said, these things, it's just the world we live in. These things are going to happen now. When I hear people freak out, or they're very concerned because somebody got compromised, I'm like, that's just what you've heard. This is happening all day, every day, and it doesn't matter if it's a 10-person doctor's office or a 5,000 employee hospital. It doesn't matter. It's happening across the board. It's just it's the world we live in now.
So no one's immune to this.
No one's immune to it. We see our clients have hack attempts. We monitor this stuff all the time. And it doesn't matter what industry they're in. It doesn't matter what client. It doesn't matter if they're construction, industrial, legal. There's bots out there. There's people constantly trying to hack, trying to get in. Again, that's how they make their money. That's their profession. So nobody's immune to this.
This is going on all day, every day, to everybody.
All day, every day. Yeah,
I always thought it was too small. No one gave it. I can curse on my own podcast. No one gave it shit. Who cares about Matt Dolman Law Group? But there's people out there looking at our vulnerabilities all the time.
All the time. We actually did a test one time, and I'd have to look back, see if I had the information still on it. But we went and got a brand new internet connection. We put a brand new system, and we exposed it to the internet. And in less than an hour, it was already getting attacked thousands of times trying to break into it within 1 hour of it being on the internet.
And most attacks are just unsuccessful for what reason?
Most are. So there's bots that are constantly running, and what they're doing is they're looking for anything open or anything that it can talk to. Once it talks to it, it then starts trying to pull information, like what type of system are you on the other end? Are you Windows? Are you Linux? Are you a web server? It then starts applying what's called CVEs. So it's basically there's known vulnerabilities that are posted all over the internet. And so a lot of these systems are now built, and they're smart to start looking at those and to know how to exploit the known vulnerabilities. And so it's like, oh, this is a Windows system. Oh, hey, they're running Windows 10. And it just literally will sit there and start trying these vulnerabilities over and over and over and hoping that one of those work and that allows it into the system. And that's all automated. It's not even humans having to do a lot of this. It literally is automation and bots that are doing this all day, all night.
Really? And then there's also humans out there collectively working on attacking certain grids, right?
Oh yeah, definitely, 100%. What you'll see a lot of times too is once something gets found, you'll see the traffic just start multiplying very quickly, and from different fronts. Because a lot of these systems are all talking to each other, they're all communicating. And so especially like with your denial of service attacks, you've got a lot of sleeper agents out there. So it's computers that have been infected, and they literally have a piece of software that's sitting on them, and it's laying dormant, not doing nothing until a command is given to it. And so basically, if somebody's paid to go take somebody offline, or if somebody just wants to take you down, they then send a command out to these thousands or hundreds of thousands or even millions of devices that are infected and say, hey, attack this target. And they all at once will attack that target.
Wow.
Yeah, that's denial of service attacks. I've seen those before.
Well,
Yeah.
I knew the theory of denial of service attacks, but I didn't realize that like my desktop at my house could be participating in one of these and could have latent, stuff in there that's already infected. Like I didn't realize I could be participating in them unwittingly.
Yeah, even your IoT devices. So like your TV, refrigerators, any of your devices now that are smart devices and are on the internet, they're now starting to utilize those type of devices and even infect those to one, not only collect your information, but can also use those to attack others. Yeah, when you start digging into it, and kind of like you, I geek out on it sometimes, but when you start digging into it and start understanding a lot of it, it's really scary and freaky what all's out there. But again, you
I
can't.
almost don't want to know. I'd rather be blissfully ignorant. And think that everything's
Yeah,
perfectly
now
fine.
I'm just sitting here disturbed by the fact that my washing machine can send out attacks on people. Like, this is blowing my mind.
Yeah, we had one of our security guys here who really dug deep into everything, and he's head of our security. He will not have a smart TV, and it's almost impossible to not buy a TV that's a smart TV. And so we kind of laughed at him as when he finally was forced to get one. First thing he did was pull it apart, and he started going in there and actually removing certain chips so that it wasn't smart anymore. Because he's like, I know what these things are doing. I know what we can do with them. He's like, don't like it.
Without going too in depth, Matt and I and our law firm recently, probably the last 6 months, became acutely aware of just how much your smart devices are actually listening to you and what they're doing with that information. And I'm sitting here thinking, all right, well, my phone listens to me because I see the ads pop up, right? I had no idea the TV in my bedroom was listening to everything my wife and I say and do. Okay, the TV in my kid's room is listening to everything my kid says when his doors are closed, and he's like, it's crazy. And then it's using, like, it blows my mind that we're so connected and all this stuff goes out. And
so
nobody realized
there's this new form of technology that was introduced to us. I think it was like Cox Media Group we did something with for a little while. That if you say certain terms and certain permutations of those terms, it would trigger ads to be sent. So like if you were on, your smart devices are on, you mentioned like car accident lawyer and Geico and personal injury, then all of a sudden an ad for a PI lawyer would show up, and those, that's ads would be tied and correlated to whatever you're stating in, prompts, and that's crazy. It's that your technology is actually listening to you at all hours, and you sign these disclaimers whenever you get a device.
Yeah. Yeah, it's big money too. If you start looking to where a lot of these companies make their money, it's not off some of the services they provide, it's off the data they sell. So it's, big money, huge industry for just taking data, manipulating data, selling data. It's the more you dig into it, the more you just understand that you can't really hide. It's all out there.
And the more you realize that free app really isn't free. Right.
No.
And like,
No.
and I didn't realize, like, hey, I've got all these apps I don't use that got downloaded onto my phone at some point. Well, each and every one of these at times is asking for permissions and listening and doing and sending the data off to a different part. So if I got 10 apps on my phone, that's 10 things sending at. If I got 100, that's 100 different ones that I've given permission, even though it's all through the one device. And it just scares the hell out of me.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're starting to see now too, like iPhone, it's starting to alert you now saying, hey, this app is tracking your stuff, and you can click, don't allow to track. But then you got Apple doing the same stuff. So your data is being tracked, it's being sent and recorded somewhere.
So unless you're like the Unabomber living off the grid in some like wooden house out in the woods, you're basically, you don't have it. There's no other way out of this thing.
No, there's not. Yeah, I went out and tried to clear my data, try to remove as much as I can just to see. You can't. It happens to repopulate so fast. It doesn't matter.
That's crazy. Unbelievable. So, any other questions you got, Stan?
No, well, I've probably got lots and lots of questions. Like, I can sit here and nerd out on this stuff for quite a while, but at the 30-minute mark, we're probably starting to bore some of our viewers. So, and Daniel probably is getting bored of answering our questions, but
No, thanks for having me. And I love this kind of stuff. Again, I love IT. I nerd out all the time on it.
So Dan, how can our the listeners reach out to you if they have questions regarding cybersecurity or just IT questions in general?
Yeah, so best way is go to our website. It's evolv.us, evolv.us. We're a tech company, so we had to be funny and not spell it correctly. So don't add that extra E on there. But best way is go to our website, fill out the contact form, say, hey, you saw the podcast, and reach out, and we can get in contact that way.
Well, appreciate having you on, Daniel. I really appreciate you making time for us today.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's been fun. We'll have to do it again and deep dive in some other IT nerd stuff.
Definitely. Stan,
yeah.
Want to close it out?
Yeah, thanks. This has been really enjoyable for me. I was excited when I knew what we were getting ready to get into, and I kind of enjoyed it and learned a little bit more than I thought I would. Thanks for coming on. It's been another really enjoyable episode for me of the David vs. Goliath podcast. As always, if you want any information on anything about our law firm, you can go to www.dolmanlaw.com. And Daniel, please remind us where they can find Evolv if they're looking for it.
Yeah, evolv.us, evolv.us.
Thanks again.
Thanks again, Dan.
All right, thanks for having me.
This episode of David vs. Goliath is over, but your journey is just getting started. To share your story with us, visit dolmanlaw.com. That's DOLMAN law.com, or call 866-965-6242. The insights and views presented in David vs. Goliath are for general information purposes only and should not be taken as legal advice for any individual case or situation. The information presented is not a substitute for consulting with an attorney, nor does tuning into this podcast constitute an attorney-client relationship of any kind. Any case result information provided on any portion of this podcast should not be understood as a promise of any particular result in a future case. Dolman Law Group. Big firm results, small firm personal attention.